Welcome back, it's me, Lou. I'm here for another action figure review. Today from McFarlane Toys, we are reviewing the Batman Arkham Asylum Killer Croc. This belongs to the DC Multiverse line of action figures, and as you can see, it's quite the large figure. So this figure is a mega figure. It comes in the larger deluxe sized packaging. I already unboxed it, but just because the box wouldn't fit underneath my camera. This is a very large figure. It stands in at 9.5 inches. For a size comparison, here he is next to the McFarlane design Batman action figure. And Killer Croc completely dwarfs Batman right here. Now, as large as this figure is, I actually think it's a little bit smaller than what it's supposed to be. If you played the Batman Arkham Asylum video game, you'll remember, I think within the first 5 or 10 minutes of the first game, we're introduced to Killer Croc. He's being escorted, I think, from the freight elevator by the Arkham Asylum guards as they're armed with tasers. And Killer Croc is this gigantic. He can't stand upright in the freight elevator. He's kind of like hunched over. And then as soon as he exits, he just towers over Batman and everyone. He is just gigantic. And as large as this figure is, I kind of feel like he's a little bit too small for, when compared to as how they portray him in the video game. Now, the first thing I noticed immediately about this figure when I first purchased this is that it's incredibly detailed. This is probably one of the most detailed figures in the McFarlane DC Multiverse line. For one, there is an incredible amount of sculpting to create the surface detail on his skin. He kind of really has that crocodile-like texture. But on top of that, the paint application is just superb. There's a light, almost like light gray, whitish dry brush effect that's applied to the scales to kind of highlight the edges and to really make, his crocodile, armor plating really come to life, add some depth and realism to it. And then you can see the paint gradation on the back, how it's slightly darker around his spinal area. It's an amazing figure, really hefty. But one thing I think that due to the size of this figure and the weight, it comes at a price. As soon as I took this guy out of the box, one thing I noticed is that his limbs, at least on my figure, are kind of loose. As you can see here, they kind of just almost float around. And I can only imagine that over time, these limbs will just, and the limbs and joints will only get looser. For me, it's kind of disappointing also because the joints in his legs, they're not that tight either. So it kind of feels like that you need a lot more than just a figure stand to hold this guy up. In my opinion, I think you need to go out to a hobby shop and buy one of those smaller metal framed doll stands. The one that kind of has a silver ring that you could clasp around the waist, and it kind of has a steel armature with a metal base. I kind of feel like that's what you need to hold up this guy just because his size and his weight. But beyond that, definitely one of the most impressive sculpts I've seen, over the last year. Incredibly detailed. Just look at that portrait. The teeth are incredibly sharp. The paint effect around the eyes and the forehead is astounding. I love the metal finish on his collar piece. It really captures that metallic finish. Again, I can't stress enough how impressed I am with the crocodile scaling and the dry brush effect on top of it. The sculpting is really is really well done too. It's very crisp, very hard edged. It doesn't appear to be muddy in any areas. And if you look at the back, it's really just, it's so impressive. The size of this guy, the amount of detail, it's really something. He has a beautiful texture on his pants, but you'll notice there is some disconnect here. The pant leg has a slightly deeper and glossier finish than like the crotch area. You know, this is made of a softer, rubbery plastic as opposed to the legs, which is a thicker, denser material. A little bit of disconnect on the knees as well. As you can see, there's a glossy finish here, but on the kneecaps, it's kind of like a matte finish. Love the attention to detail around the ankles with the stained pant legs towards the bottom, and then you have the restraints. Again, kind of like having that metallic finish, much like the collar up here. Nice pointed toes. And it's a beast of a figure, literally. This thing is awesome. And like I said, if you played the Arkham Asylum video game, you'll remember that first scene when we're introduced to Killer Croc. He is just gigantic. Now, in terms of this figure's articulation, his head rotates. Will he look up or down? Not really. His arms rotate. Again, like I mentioned earlier, my limbs are just so loose. They kind of just float around. You know, I don't understand that. He does not have that butterfly ball socket joint like other McFarlane figures, which I think is the reason why the arm floats around like this. There is no bicep cut. It's only a single pinned elbow. The range of motion is kind of limited. It only goes about there at a right angle. Articulated wrist, you can see the joint right there. Unfortunately, he doesn't come with any extra hands. He just has the fist and then the open hand on the opposite end. In terms of the articulation around his torso, mid-torso cut. Now, mine, it feels loose in some areas, but then when you try to turn it, it feels kind of stuck, and I don't want to force it right now, but as you can see, much like the arms, it's not as tight as I'd like. It's weird because it's loose, but then when you try to rotate it, it doesn't want to rotate. And likewise, the waist is kind of more of the same. It's severely tight, and I don't want to force it either. I don't know how strong that joint is. If anything, you might have to heat this figure up to loosen up the to soften the plastic, just so you can get the joint to be loosened up a little. The legs kick up about there. They kick out, and like I stressed earlier, my joints on my figure are just super loose. You know, I don't think this was engineered properly enough to, like, you know, provide that kind of like clutch power and resistance to, like, you know, give it a really tight squeeze. It just feels too loose on my figure. You know, the limbs just feel kind of like they're floating around a little bit. The knees, on the other hand, different story. They're super tight, and as you can see, they're double pinned and exposed. And then you have toe articulation, and I think the ankle articulation is kind of limited due to the pant leg right there. This figure is, you know, I think in anyone's collection, this would be an incredibly detailed centerpiece. You know, this guy really steals the show. It's this gigantic, it's an enormous figure, very hefty. And in terms of the mega figs, he's kind of a little bit more on the medium size. Like, I think the Swamp Thing figure was a lot larger than this. This guy kind of, if I had to say, I think he's kind of like roughly around the same height, maybe as like Dark Side. But it's an impressive figure nonetheless. I think this is, in terms of the sculpting, you know, this is really a showstopper right here. You know, this guy, this really takes the cake. Well worth the purchase. But I think the only thing holding him back is that, you know, I'm not sure if it's a quality control issue or if it's just the way the figure is designed, but, you know, the limbs being kind of like loose like this, for me, it's just a little bit disappointing. And the fact that I can't twist him without feeling like it's going to break bothers me also. But amazing figure. I think if you're a DC Multiverse fan, this is definitely worth the purchase. So far in terms of the Batman family of characters, we've seen Clayface, Man-Bat, Killer Croc, Bane in the mega figure size scale. And it's awesome. And, when you stand him next to Batman, it's even more impressive. He just towers over Batman. But like I said, I kind of feel like this guy is a little bit too small. But, I think I'm always kind of conflicted, like with the mega figures. Like I kind of felt Swamp Thing was too big. And maybe, this guy is just right. But, if you've played the game, you'll just remember that one scene. He just towers over all the Arkham guards. He towers over Batman. And he could like barely fit in that freight elevator. It's such an impressive introduction to the character. And it's just awesome. I love the Killer Croc character. And I don't know, there's something that's very awesome, primal about this guy. He's just awesome. All right, so on a scale of 1 to 10, how would I rate this guy? For me, visually, he's perfect. He looks like what he looks like in the video game. And I think the only thing that holds him back is this, maybe the quality control, a little bit of the engineering, and the joints. So unfortunately, I think I'd have to rate this guy a solid 8 to 8.5. I'd love to say he's like a perfect or like a near 9, but at least with my figure, some of the weird issues I'm having here, like the floating arms and the tight joints, just bother me. Your figure might vary though, so fingers crossed if you haven't bought it yet, maybe you'll get a better copy than mine. But impressive figure, well worth the purchase. All right, with that being said, let's wrap this one up. Once again, my name is Lou. If you're new to my channel, welcome. If you are a returning viewer, subscriber, thank you so much for your continued support. I greatly appreciate it. So until the next video, be safe, take care of yourself, buy lots of toys, and most importantly, be happy. And I'll see you at the next one. All right, later.